Hello, everybody, and welcome to First Thoughts on a Friday. What? Now I came up with a name for Friday? Hey, come on. I come up with a name for just about everything else, so hey, we got to do Friday too. Well, it's a little misleading because when I say First Thoughts, yeah, it is on Friday, but I've had first thoughts all week. I hopefully you have too about our gospel lesson. We are about to embark on a little adventure. See, the sixth chapter of John has 70 some verses. I think it's 71, something like that. And we are going to look at all of them over this week and the next 4 weeks, too. Jesus, the bread of life. That's the theme running through the whole thing. And we see that at the very beginning of our chapter 6 here. But I'd like to start by reading a portion of chapter 20. Are you ready? Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written, that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name. That's really what it's all about, isn't it? It's about seeing Jesus and believing so that you may have life in his name. And that's what's going on in the gospel lesson. John is often called the book of signs. He uses that word signs as a indicator of who Jesus is. And it points the way to him being the Messiah, the Christ. Our lesson is exactly what we would have had last week if we didn't skip it in our gospel from Mark. Well, I say exactly, almost exactly. It's Jesus feeding the 5,000 and also Jesus walking on water. The two go hand in hand, as strange as that seems. And let's just take a look at just some first thoughts. We see that Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, and there's all these people, as it says, gathered there. Now here's what it says next. He went up on the mountain. It didn't say Jesus went up on a mountain. He went up on the mountain. What mountain could he be referring to? Keep that in mind. And it says, now the Passover feast of the Jews is at hand. This miracle, feeding the 5,000, is found in all of the Gospels, all four Gospels. This is the only one mentioning that it's near the feast of Passover. What's that have to do with it? Keep that in mind just for a second. Then he lifted up his eyes. He saw all these people, and he goes, hey, how are we going to feed them? And he said he did this to test Philip. He said it to test Philip. Where else were the people tested in Scripture when it came down to bread and eating? Keep that in mind just for a second. See, these are all first thoughts on a Friday. Then he talks about one of the disciples said, hey, we found this little boy who has some barley loaves. Barley loaves. Barley loaves. What? Couldn't it have just been whole wheat bread? Why barley loaves? Then Jesus took the bread and he took that bread, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them. The other gospel accounts say he blessed it. What's the difference between giving thanks and blessing? And then he distributed it to all the people who were seated there, to all 5,000. He distributed it, not the disciples, as it says in the other Gospels. Jesus distributed it. And when it was all done, he said, hey, gather up all the fragments so that nothing will be left. Gather it all up. 12 baskets full were left over. They saved the leftovers. And then people said, hey, this is the prophet who's to come into the world. And at the very end, Jesus ran away. It says he withdrew, but actually the word literally means he fled to not a mountain, but the mountain. Hey, let's not even get into Jesus walking on the water. Let's just stop right there with the whole stuff with feeding of the 5,000. Think about all those things that I just asked you to think about, okay? First thoughts on a Friday. First thoughts on a Friday. Feast of Passover at hand. Passover, what's that got to... Oh, it has got to do with the Israelite people, right? And Moses leading the people out of Egypt. Moses leading the people out of Egypt, out of bondage. They're in the wilderness. They're in the wilderness. Oh, we could have even talked about that, how they were way out in the middle of nowhere when Jesus was talking to the people, but the people of Israel were in the wilderness when they needed food. And they went to Moses. It talks about bread, manna provided by God in the wilderness through Moses. Okay? And it also talked about God telling Moses, hey, I'm testing the people. You know, they're only supposed to take as much as they can eat right now, and that's it. But wait a minute. At the very end, it says there were 12 baskets full left over. Is Jesus better than Moses? Barley loaves. What's it? Barley loaves have to do with it? Except that only the poorest of the poor ate barley loaves. Jesus reaching out to the poorest of the poor, the outsiders. And why 12 baskets full? Why 12? Could it be Jesus is creating a new Israel? A new people of God through his proclamation of the kingdom? The prophet coming into the world. Weren't the people looking for a new Messiah who would come and be called the prophet? And getting back to the mountain, not a mountain, the mountain. Is that referring to the mountain that Moses went up to get the law of God and to give the people and to give the words of God to the people? Wow, there's a lot more going on in this gospel lesson than we first thought. And we haven't even gotten into Jesus walking on the water because, hey, what did Moses have to do? He had to call upon God to split the water to allow them to walk through on dry land. Jesus says, I'll just walk on it. First thoughts on a Friday. Let that all just seep in and mull through your mind as you prepare to hear this gospel lesson. Talking about Jesus. Talking about the one in whom, as we read about him, it is he who brings us life. What did I just read here? But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name. Have a blessed day.